panel 2. Title of panel 2 is Peace Begins with Her, the gender dimension of intercultural dialogue. Coming on stage as our moderator is Her Excellency, Mrs. Kathleen Bodiai, founding president of Women for Diplomacy International, president of 36th session of the General Conference of UNESCO. Joining us on stage is Monsignor Francesco Fallo, former permanent observer of Holy See to UNESCO, Ms. Tanya Awad, board member of Adian Foundation for Diversity, Solidarity, and Human Dignity, Lebanon. Also coming on stage is Her Excellency Mrs. Mariam Katagam, former Minister of State, Industry, Trade, and Investment of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Let's give them a round of applause welcoming our moderator and panelists on stage. I shall now hand the mic over to Mrs. Kathleen.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Do you hear me? Is it on? Yeah. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to see you again. And as Monsignor Follow said, he's in minority here in this panel, which is, to be honest, quite seldom. So we celebrate that at the moment. The idea for us to discuss this beautiful title, Peace Begins with Her, the gender dimension of intercultural dialogue, was touched upon many of the speeches already today. But I would like to propose that first I will ask all the three distinguished panelists to have a statement or to introduce their vision on that very special topic. And then I think it would be very important for all of us to discuss it. And I would like also to open the floor to you as well. So I would like to start just introducing the panelists with Tanya Awad Gorra, who has an MBA in journalism. So he is a journalist and in the process of writing her thesis in nonviolent education and mediation. That would be really very interesting to know a little bit more about that, especially what the role of women in it. What can you talk about that? Tanya is an international and regional trainer in nonviolent communication, mediation, combating hate speech, and peace building with local and international organizations within the EU, the UN, and beyond. And she held a TV segment in an Arab morning show introducing nonviolence and human rights for 5 consecutive years. We always talk about at UNESCO how important it is to communicate our thoughts and really to get to find the people so that we wouldn't stay only in the bubble of the UN, but we would really find the outreach to our topic. She is also a well-established voice-over talent for several telecom and advertising companies across the Arab world, and she coordinates the education and trainings in the Lebanese national campaign to abolish death penalty. On my right, if you look at us on my left, sits His Eminence Monsignor Francesco Follo, I must say one of my favorite colleagues ever in my life. We served together here at UNESCO at that time. He is Italian, and of course he was representing his Holy Father, the Holy See. He obtained a bachelor degree in theology, but I must say that he's also a journalist. Right? So it's a very interesting panel that we were also once journalists here, all of us in a way. I don't know about you, Excellency, but we definitely, three of us, felt, somehow related to communication. And he became a member of the Order of Journalists, National Council actually, in 1978. He held the position of deputy director of the weekly magazine La Vita Cattolica of the Diocese of Cremona. He worked as a minute taker at the Secretariat of the State of the Holy See. Now that is really interesting. If you will write your memoir about all these minutes, I think we would be all very interesting to know more about that. As I said, Monsignor Follo is himself a journalist, a philosopher, a thinker, a diplomat. So I think it would be also very interesting to hear his point of views, but also the Holy See's point of views, the Church point of views about this topic. Monsignor Follo himself published 17 books to date, and 4 of which he wrote alone on St. Teresa of Calcutta, St. John Paul II, the connection between mission and cultures, and the activity of role of the Holy See's observer mission to UNESCO. And it's a great honor to turn to another one of my favorite colleagues here at UNESCO, Ambassador Mariam Katagum, who is an educationist and administrator and diplomat with leadership experience in the Nigerian public service and within the United Nations system. We, all 3 of us, served together at the time. We were permanent delegates of our countries here. During her expansive career, she worked extensively in the area of multilateral cooperation in education and on several World Bank, UNESCO, UNICEF. She served as Nigeria's ambassador, permanent delegate to Paris, UNESCO between 2009 and 2019. And she also served as Nigeria's representative on the executive board of UNESCO. With a professional background rooted in education and public policy, Ambassador Katagum brought a wealth of experience to her role, which she used to amplify Nigeria's voice in global development dialogues. She represented Nigeria on the board of the Commonwealth of Learning in Vancouver, Canada. On successful completion of her assignment at UNESCO, she was appointed Nigeria's Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment by President Buhari from 2019 and 23. So it's a very distinguished panel, very diverse also. We are coming from different parts of the world, and I'm very honored that I can sit with you all on this stage. I would like to turn first to Minister, towards you, because what I'm thinking from different point of view and from different continents, what we are representing here, it would be nice to understand what you or your culture think or says about the whole concept, which is really the question, is it really true that peace begins with, I know with a smile, I was told by you all, but whether really the peace begins with the women or by the women or without them, it's very difficult to think about. So probably I would like to ask you first to present your thoughts to start with. Thank you. Yes, you can go there, yes.
Thank you very much, our dear moderator, Excellency, Your Excellencies, distinguished participants. I want to place on record my appreciation to the organizers for inviting me to share my reflections on this topic. I'm from Nigeria, as you've heard, and by way of setting the context, Nigeria is one of Africa's most culturally diverse countries, with a population of over 120 million and more than 250 ethnic groups and multiple religious traditions. While diversity is a national strength, it has also contributed to recurring communal conflicts, religious tensions, and regional instability. The situation has been exacerbated by the Boko Haram and other terrorist activities in the northeast and north-central parts of the country in the last 16 years. Intercultural dialogue, communication, and cooperation across cultural, ethnic, and religious boundaries has emerged as a key peace-building tool. So despite the prominence of dialogue initiatives, women's roles in peace building and intercultural engagement remain under-recognized, underreported, and poorly understood. Yet inclusive governance and conflict prevention require recognizing women's central role in reconciliation and social cohesion. Now, what are women's roles in peace building? Already in the previous panel and other statements made this morning, this has been clearly enunciated. So I'll just briefly touch on the 5 that I recognize as pillars of peace building. First, women act as boundary crossers through marriage, trade, caregiving, education, and religious participation. Women maintain relationships across ethnic, religious, and cultural divides. These ties form a kind of social infrastructure that can be mobilized for communication, trust building, and early de-escalation when tensions arise. Secondly, women are relational mediators. Much of women's mediation work never enters courts, councils, or peace tables. It happens in families, neighborhoods, religious communities, and youth networks. Often, this work is undocumented, so this quiet conflict prevention plays a significant role in stopping local disputes from escalating into broader violence. Third, as early warning and prevention actors. Fourth, as stabilizers of communities during active conflict. That is, when violence erupts, women sustain social life under extreme pressure. They organize care for displaced families, protect children, negotiate access to food and water, and keep communication open between fractured groups. They do not wait for programs or policies to arrive, but they absorb the shock in real time. Lastly, the 5th pillar is women as transmitters of norms across generations. Through caregiving, education, and religious socialization, women shape how children and young people understand difference, grievance, revenge, and coexistence. In intercultural and interfaith contexts, this role is decisive. Attitudes towards the other are learned long before formal dialogue begins, and women are central to that learning process. The critical issue, Madam Moderator, is that most of this work takes place outside formal peace architecture. It unfolds in homes, markets, schools, displacement camps, and religious spaces, not in negotiation rooms or conference halls. Since this type of work does not produce signed documents, budgets, or policy documents, it is routinely excluded from what institutions recognize as peace building. And this is where intercultural dialogue is often misunderstood. At the global level, dialogue is frequently treated as an event that is structured, facilitated, and documented. For many women, however, dialogue is just a practice, not a performance. It is continuous, relational, and embedded in daily life. It happens before conflict, during conflict, and long after formal agreements are signed. Northern Nigeria can exemplify this. Women routinely struggle through religious, ethnic, and livelihood tensions. They negotiate access to shared resources, intervene to prevent retaliatory cycles, and maintain coexistence under constant strain. These actions are ordinary, and it is precisely this ordinariness that makes them effective. And I'll give a few examples. In Borno State, Borno and Adamawa, these are 2 states in the northeast that have been severely affected by the terrorist activities. The UNDP has supported women groups in agriculture and saving initiatives that has enabled these women Many of them are displaced to rebuild livelihoods and support their children's education and participate in collective problem solving across ethnic and religious lines. And I will cite many other examples, but these basically show that women are not absent from intercultural and interfaith peace building. They are foundational to it. But the problem we have is that their roles are informal, while power, funding, and recognition remain tied to formalized processes. So across West Africa, and particularly in Northeast Nigeria, women's roles in conflict does not have a simplistic categorization. Women are not only victims, nor are they uniformly peacemakers. Many operate in morally and politically ambiguous spaces that are shaped by coercion, survival, and limited choice. The Boko Haram insurgency makes this complexity impossible to ignore. Between 2011 and 2018, women and girls accounted for a majority of the women's documented suicide bombers, approximately 244 out of 434 cases. Thousands more were abducted and coerced into roles as intelligence gatherers, recruiters, cooks, porters, or wives of fighters. Yet despite this deep involvement, women's agencies during the conflict, whether coerced or strategic, is almost entirely absent from official narratives and post-conflict responses. Nigeria's de-radicalization and reintegration framework, called Operation Safe Corridor, explicitly excludes women, citing conservative gender norms. Of hundreds of Boko Haram suspects prosecuted, only a handful were women. Former female fighters, abductees, and coerced collaborators are left in a legal and social vacuum, stigmatized by their communities, yet unsupported by the state. Research has also confirmed that many women bypass reintegration programs altogether because they are designed exclusively around male combatant pathways. The consequences are unresolved trauma, social exclusion, and long-term instability embedded in the community level. So beyond participation in conflict dynamics, women also carry the heaviest material and social costs of war. Women make up half of displaced populations, face heightened exposure to food insecurity, healthcare collapse, and gender-based violence. Another example is that in Borno State alone, the destruction of health infrastructure has been catastrophic. Boko Haram destroyed 19 general hospitals and 248 primary healthcare centers in the state over a period of 8 years. As a result, maternal mortality in the region reached an estimated 1,549 deaths per 100,000 live births, and that's the highest in the country. Conflict also intensifies violence against women within households and communities. So the erosion of law enforcement, economic stress, and displacement fuels domestic abuse, sexual violence, and forced marriages. Cultural norms also compound these harms. Patriarchal expectations, stigma, and a culture of silence discourage reporting and limit access to justice. So many survivors remain trapped, economically dependent, socially isolated, and unable to seek redress. However, one of the most enduring impacts of conflict on women is the systemic disruption of girls' education. Boko Haram deliberately targeted schools, understanding the fear and abduction would keep girls at home. Since 2014, more than 600 girls, in fact, it's actually more, the number is higher than this, have been kidnapped from schools. Survivors recount first conversion, sexual violence, and prolonged captivity. Even after release, many of them do not return to school. Now, without deliberate institutional intervention, conflict entrenches patriarchy. Systems meant to rebuild instead reproduce inequality and leave women to shoulder responsibility for survival without recognition, resources, or authority. I've used the last few minutes just to put the context, particularly in the areas where we have ongoing conflict in the country, whether it's conflict as a result of herder farmers, other religious conflict, or conflict as a result of terrorists. Now, what is the connection between religion, culture, and women's authority in peace processes in my country? Our experience has shown that most women doing serious peace work in religious communities are not operating against faith structures. They are working inside them with authority they were never formally granted. This distinction matters because formal religious power, all the titles, pulpits, councils, official representation, remains overwhelmingly male-dominated. In the North, where I come from, women engage in peace building through Islamic and cultural structures, often operate as Islamia teachers, wives or daughters of clerics, and mediators in family disputes. They rarely speak as formal leaders, but as trusted insiders. Women entering these spaces often face a double bind. When they speak cautiously, they're dismissed. When they speak assertively, they are judged as inappropriate or westernized. So women also function as primary intergenerational bridges between trauma and resilience, memory and meaning, loss and continuity. Many youth peace programs artificially separate young people from the women who shaped them. I think somebody had mentioned intergenerational learning in the last panel. This breaks the transmission line. Evidence increasingly shows that intergenerational models, particularly mother-daughter, mentor-based approaches, reduce radicalization and recurrence of violence more sustainably. So how do we measure impact? At some point in every serious conversation about peace building, a familiar question emerges. Where is the evidence? It is a fair question and an essential one. But when it is asked without attention to how peace actually works, it can be misleading. The challenge is not that women's peace work lacks impact. The challenge is that dominant measurement systems were never designed to capture the kinds of impact women most often produce. Most donor and institutional frameworks, and we have quite a lot of donors, non-state actors operating in the country, trying to assist to ameliorate the situation. But most of them rely on results-based management models that privilege what can be counted quickly and reported cleanly. Outputs delivered, numbers reached, activities completed, timelines met. These tools are more effective for infrastructure projects or service delivery. They are far less effective for peace building and least effective of all for informal, relational, and preventative forms of peace work, where women are disproportionately active. Now, research has suggested a mixed evaluation method using qualitative data, life stories, process tracing, community testimony, etc., and also longitudinal tracking, whereby you're following communities over years rather than months. And the latter, just using short cycles, actually just fits into the donor cycle, their budgeting cycle, their annual reporting cycle. Now I'm going on to highlight some of the challenges and opportunities for women at the intersection of culture, religion, and peace building in Nigeria. Let me just start with the barriers. Despite their demonstrated effectiveness as mediators, peace advocates, and community mobilizers, women in Nigeria continue to face structural, cultural, and institutional barriers that limit their participation in intercultural dialogue and formal peace-building processes. These barriers undermine inclusive peace building and weaken the sustainability of reconciliation efforts. I've listed about 8 here, but I'm just going to highlight 1 or 2. First, the patriarchal cultural norms and gender roles. Nigeria's patriarchal social structure often restricts women's participation in leadership and decision-making roles. Cultural norms in many communities position men as authority figures, while confining women to domestic roles. Secondly, exclusion from formal peace negotiations and decision-making. Women remain significantly underrepresented in official peace processes, security institutions, and policy dialogues. Peace negotiations are often conducted by the political elites, religious authorities, traditional leaders. These are all spheres traditionally dominated by men. This exclusion reduces the legitimacy and inclusiveness of peace agreements and prevents the incorporation of grassroots perspectives for sustainable peace. Another of the areas I would mention would be religious and cultural interpretations limiting women's public voice. While religion can serve as a platform for peace building, certain interpretations of religious norms restricts women's public leadership roles. In some communities, women's participation in interfaith dialogue is limited by expectations of modesty, silence, or male mediation. However, emerging women leaders are challenging these norms and are expanding spaces for female engagement in peace advocacy. Other barriers include security risks and gender-based violence, economic marginalization and resource constraints. Economic inequality significantly constrains women's participation in intercultural dialogue because often they lack financial resources, access to transportation, and funding for community initiatives. Peace-building meetings and regional dialogue forum may require travel and logistical support, which many women cannot afford. So limited access to funding also restricts the sustainability of women-led initiatives. I think the last of the barriers that I would mention is educational and information gaps. Lower literacy rates and limited access to education in some regions reduce women's opportunity to engage in policy dialogue and leadership roles. So limited awareness of legal rights, peace-building frameworks further constrains participation. Access to peace education and leadership training remains uneven, particularly in rural and conflict-affected communities. Others are political marginalization, intersectional barriers, ethnicity, class, geography, etc. So by this point, one thing should be clear. Women are not absent from peace building. Participation is not the issue. Access is. And access in this context has very little to do with willingness, competence, or commitment. It has everything to do with how peace systems are designed, who they are designed for. So it's not a capacity problem, but a problem of system design. So while women are filtered out of formal peace spaces, they're deeply embedded in the informal systems that actually prevent societies from collapsing. Communities survive conflict because someone maintains daily coherence. Very often, that person is a woman. I have several examples of women activities, whether women peace mediators in the Niger Delta, the religious groups in Kaduna, Plateau, Borno, and so on and so forth. Now, what are the opportunities we have in Nigeria? Right now, we have the Nigeria's national gender policy, in which active implementation of the UN Security Council 1325 is being implemented. Another area is the Special Seats Bill. Here, the National Assembly is considering amending the Constitution to increase female representation at the national and state houses of assembly. Whereas women make up to 50%, nearly 50% of the Nigerian population, we have only 54 women across 990 legislative seats. So that's just about 5%. And why is this important? Because if the voices of the women are not carried through the legislation, then decision-making, policy-making, budgets, and so on are prepared predominantly by men. So this is going to be a landmark legislation, and we're looking forward to its passage by the National Assembly. So how do we move from dialogue to social transformation? Dialogue matters, but dialogue without power does not change systems. While peace that does not redistribute authority is rarely durable. Decades of peace processes have shown that participation alone is not enough. Influence matters. Where women are invited to speak, but excluded from decision-making, peace agreements reproduce the very inequalities that made conflict possible. So for us in Nigeria, specific actions that, I've made recommendations. They need to transform patriarchal norms to become more gender sensitive, strengthening gender responsive policies, improving women's economic empowerment, ensuring protection for women peace builders, and expanding access to education and leadership training, as well as institutionalizing women's representation in dialogue and political process. So in conclusion, peace building in Nigeria requires more than political agreements. It requires social transformation rooted in inclusion, dialogue, and justice. Peace begins with her, which is our thematic area, reflects the reality that women cultivate peace in homes, communities, and national spaces. Recognizing and strengthening women's roles in intercultural dialogue is not merely a gender issue, it is a national imperative. Nigeria remains committed to partnering and collaborating with all stakeholders in actions and decisions that support, strengthen, and enhance gender-conscious dialogue, and will continue to advocate for peace that is equitable, just, and sustainable for all. I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
It's been a bit long.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I know it was a bit long, but it was fantastic. What an insight we all got about this topic. I think it was really thorough, and it opened many of our eyes as well, I think. So thank you very much for coming here and taking it really seriously and going into so many important details. We will discuss it a little bit later, but now I would like to turn to Monsignor Follo. Now, you are, of course, representing the Holy See. You are also an Italian. So in Italian culture, the mamma, right? That's a very important person. And in our faith, Virgin Mary is another very important person. So now I would like to ask you to give your insight to this.
Vielen Dank. Es tut mir sehr leid, aber ich habe Deutsch vergessen. Alors, merci de me donner la parole. Alors, avant, je vais préparer le discours qui est là. Mais je dois faire une introduction pour montrer que j'ai étudié. Alors, vous savez que le mot philosophie signifie pas seulement amour de la sagesse, mais c'est aussi la sagesse de l'amour. Donc, une première chose. L'autre chose, il y a une belle définition d'un penseur allemand qui disait, Novalis, qui disait que la philosophie est la nostalgie de retourner à la maison. Pourquoi est-ce que j'ai fait cette petite introduction? Parce que je veux parler de la contribution féminine au monde, à la paix, à partir d'un exemple d'une femme qui a vécu il y a 2 siècles, Thérèse de Lisieux. Cette dame a vécu entre le 1893 et le 1897. Donc elle est morte à 24 ans. Elle était si profonde dans ses écrits que l'Église l'a nommée docteur de l'Église. Et pour être docteur de l'Église, il faut 3 choses. Doctrine profonde, nouveauté de doctrine et rayonnement. Cette dame, qui a été dans un monastère à Lisieux, a vécu jusqu'à 24 ans. Quand ils ont publié ses mémoires, l'année après la publication, 1898, c'était 2000 exemplaires. Maintenant, on a 160 millions d'exemplaires traduits en 14 langues. Donc, pourquoi cette jeune dame consacrée dans un monastère a une influence si importante? Une telle influence que même dans une église au Caire, il y a une statue de Thérèse de Lisieux où les femmes musulmanes vont la prier. Elle rayonne en tout le monde, 80 langues, 160 millions d'exemplaires, et l'UNESCO, dans 2021, l'a proclamé aussi dans le programme des personnes qui ont donné une contribution pour la paix à travers la culture, sur proposition de la France. Et la chose intéressante, que quand j'ai suggéré la synthèse, c'était pour dire que cette fille de 24 ans était une femme, une grande intellectuelle et une chercheuse du sens. Alors, quelle est la contribution qu'elle a donnée et qu'elle est actuelle? Si la philosophie est la sagesse de l'amour et l'amour de la sagesse, cette jeune dame a montré qu'il y a 4 façons d'aimer. D'être épouse, avant tout d'être fille, d'être épouse, mère et sœur. Pour rester dans les clous, je ne les explique pas tout, mais il me semble très évident, non? Mais il y a une autre chose. On a entendu que derrière un homme, il y a une femme, ou maintenant il y a à côté. J'ai une autre proposition. Il y a 2 soleils, l'homme et la femme. C'est mieux, non? Il y a 2 soleils. Les 2 soleils illuminent la vérité, parce que la vérité, disait un penseur russe, la vérité est l'amour manifesté. Et la beauté est la vérité réalisée. Donc, aimer signifie quoi? Thérèse de Lisieux a donné sa réponse, que donner, aimer est tout donner, aimer est donner soi-même. Alors, quand une femme engendre un enfant, elle donne la vie. Nous, on dit qu'une personne donne la vie quand elle meurt. Non, la femme donne la vie au début, elle est mère. Mais si on regarde l'école de phénoménologie Husserl, c'est une façon de phénoménologie. On regarde la femme au niveau de phénomène, comme on dit Husserl. Elle est au niveau de physiologie, anatomie, elle est faite pour être compagne de l'homme et mère. Bon. Mais ce n'est pas tout. À mon avis, il faut aller plus au-delà de ça. La femme, dans la tradition chrétienne, et je vous conseille, si vous avez le temps de lire les grands documents de Jean-Paul II sur la dignité de la femme, pour montrer que la femme est éducatrice. Parce que j'ai entendu que la femme doit avoir plus de pouvoir. C'est bien, j'ai aucun souci à ce sujet. Mais à mon avis, si on éduque des personnes pour faire des choses, ils peuvent être à la fin abusés, la fatigue ou épuisés. Si on vit en fonction de les choses à faire, on est épuisé. Si on vit en fonction de nos désirs, nous sommes frustrés. Alors, quelle est la profession naturelle de la femme? Est-ce qu'elle existe? Et si elle existe, il y a une dimension transcendantale et spirituelle? Ma réponse est oui. Et quelle est la vocation ou la profession naturelle de la femme? En allemand, ça marche bien. Was sind Sie vom Beruf? Quand on demande à une personne quelle est sa profession, on demande quelle est sa vocation. Quelle est la vocation de la femme? Bâtir la paix, oui, mais ce n'est pas tout. C'est introduire l'être humain dans la vie. L'éducation, c'est introduire dans la réalité totale. Donc, être entrepreneur, à la fin, on va à la retraite. Avoir des désirs, on va chez le psychologue. Mais être éducateur, ça dure toute la vie. La fonction d'une femme n'est pas que avoir on le donne. On peut tout améliorer, je suis d'accord, mais ce n'est pas suffisant. Il faut souligner, à mon avis, que la vocation, la profession d'une femme, c'est d'être pas que compagne et mère, mais éducatrice. Et c'est une chose qui dure toute la vie. Quand on éduque à la vie et à la vérité, là, on peut ouvrir un autre débat. Mais qu'est-ce que c'est la vérité? Mais j'ai un exemple. La vérité est comme une symphonie. Quand vous allez à un concert, vous voyez tous les instruments. Chaque instrument joue la mélodie qui lui est donnée et vous avez une symphonie. Donc l'harmonie, savoir. Alors le problème, c'est quelle est la même musique à jouer. Je ne sais pas si c'est clair. J'espère que c'est important parce que, alors, la fonction de la femme, c'est la profession de la femme, à mon avis, c'est d'être mère, mais qui éduque pour toute la vie, pas au début. On a une manière patriarcale dans l'éducation, donc la femme doit se débrouiller quand l'enfant est petit ou il est malade. Non, non, c'est une profession qui dure toute la vie. Il y a une autre chose, à mon avis, que nous, les hommes, on est, comme disait quelqu'un de moi, ami à moi, on est monotasque. On fait une chose à la fois. Non? Mais, non, c'est vrai, en plus. Merci. Et donc, alors, les hommes, avec leur cerveau monotasque, ils sont pour l'analyse et le concept. Et ils arrivent à l'abstrait. Ils se font l'abstraction. Donc, quand un homme dit qu'il fait l'étude sur l'homme, ce qu'en philosophie s'appelle anthropologie, il fait une théorie sur l'être humain. Quand une femme dit « j'ai conçu un homme », c'est une chose plus concrète, parce que la femme part de la contemplation, de l'expérimentation et arrive au concret. Alors, les deux soleils doivent travailler ensemble. Il faut récupérer donc la profession naturelle de la femme. Parce que sinon, on parle seulement des choses à faire. C'est très important. Mais, je répète, si on vit en fonction des choses à faire, on est épuisé. Si on vit en fonction des désirs, on est frustré. Il faut vivre en fonction de sa vocation, la vocation à la vie. Donc, quelle est la conclusion? Je n'ai pas bien compté le temps, mais je vais rester dans les clous. Alors, je suggère, Thérèse de Lisieux a montré que l'amour est une vertu, ce n'est pas une émotion. Quand elle priait le Notre Père, elle pleurait. Elle avait fait une expérience de paternité. Elle a vu une expérience de maternité quand elle a sauvé un condamné à mort et il est mort repenti. Et à 13 ans, avait déjà le sens de maternité. C'est-à-dire d'une femme qui donne la vie. Elle était sûre parce que et missionnaire ou le mot mission, ce n'est pas le prosélytisme, comme justement condamné aussi le pape François. Le missionnaire, c'est la façon que l'Église fait pour dialoguer. Et le dialogue, et là je m'arrête, signifie pas parole entre deux. Dia, en grec, signifie père. Dialogue, c'est la parole qui va vers l'autre et la parole qui me revient. Donc, nous faisons un dialogue interculturel, y compris sa dimension religieuse, quand nous ne laissons pas seulement informer de la bonté de l'autre, mais on se laisse former par l'autre. Donc, il faut arriver pas qu'à un partage d'idées, très bien, mais une fécondation réciproque en reconnaissant qu'il y a une dimension religieuse. Appelez Dieu comme vous voulez, mais Dieu existe. Je termine avec une citation pas connue de Descartes, un grand philosophe. C'est lui qui a inventé aussi la question du doute méthodique. Dit, je doute, donc je pense. Très bien. Je pense, donc je suis. Mais il y a une dernière phrase qu'on oublie toujours. Je suis, donc Dieu est. Et Dieu signifie lumière, ne signifie pas une chose abstraite. Le problème, c'est de dialoguer pour rencontrer et partager une vie ensemble. Merci.
Thank you very much, Monsignor Follo. It was wonderful. I'm just, I was just thinking about your last remark about the importance of dialogue. And I remember the time when I spoke the first time at the Security Council in New York at the UN, and I was starting to educate them what a real dialogue was, because the day before, I asked, I'm not saying which country's ambassador, and I said, so, I really believe in dialogue, in the Greek way. He said, of course I believe in dialogue. So I said, Excellency, what's dialogue for you? He said, when I speak and you listen. And that was not a joke. That was not a joke. So I thought it's better, even if I may say so, Eminence, that's also important that we make ourselves in a state of mind that if the other one can pursue us, we can change our way of thinking, we can change our thoughts. And I think that's also very important in the process of education. Now, I would like to, first of all, say that we pray, and we are very much with all the people at Lebanon, women, girls, men, boys, everybody. And for you, it is, Tanya, even more important to think about the role of women in peace building or making peace. And it's a tangible story. Your story in Lebanon is a tangible story. And if I may say so, I also would like to say that we know that Lebanese women are so strong. Yeah? So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, to continue in the scope of what you were just saying, a few weeks ago when I got the invitation, World of Harmony, it was to me something very sweet, something I've fought all my life for, etc. But I didn't know that in a few weeks it's going to become a core need for me to be living in a harmonious and peaceful space again. When I talk about harmony, I think, and peace, I think of my son who is stranded in Beirut. I think of my best friend. I think of all my life. Now I'm not living in Lebanon, I live in France. But if I want to live in a harmonious world, and this is how I feel, I don't just think of my people in Lebanon. I have the same thoughts for civilians in Iran. I have the same thoughts for civilians in Tel Aviv, in Gaza, in Kabul right now. People under bombs. Our empathy is not selective, should not be selective. Of course, I fear for my people. It's normal. But I cannot think of them alone. I cannot. And I think if maybe this is living, at least because peace starts with me, this is living in harmony, at least between me and myself. Maybe. Before I start my intervention, allow me to show huge gratitude for all of you who stayed since the morning and are still capable of listening and of understanding. So I'm the last person on this panel, and there's another panel coming up, and you have the toughest role today because communication is 70% listening, 30% speaking. We have the easy role today. And to talk about Lebanon, allow me, since we are on the French soil, I live in France, and I work in France, allow me to honor the language, so my intervention will be in French. This is your time to get ready with your headsets if you need headsets translation. So, quand on parle de dialogue interreligieux et politique, on parle souvent de paix, de coexistence, de citoyenneté. Mais on oublie une question fondamentale. Qui parle? Et plus profondément encore, qui est autorisé à parler? Dans les sociétés marquées par des structures traditionnelles et patriarcales, l'espace religieux et l'espace politique ont été pensés au masculin. Le langage en porte la trace, et le langage n'est jamais neutre. Il façonne l'imaginaire, il définit le centre, il décide qui est visible et qui ne l'est pas. Dans le contexte moyen-oriental, ces questions prennent une dimension particulière. Nos sociétés sont traversées par des héritages multiples. Traditions religieuses anciennes, structures communautaires fortes, systèmes juridiques souvent fondés sur des statuts personnels, confessionnels. Dans beaucoup de pays de la région, la citoyenneté n'est pas uniquement un lien entre l'individu et l'État, elle passe par l'intermédiaire de l'appartenance religieuse, familiale, communautaire. Dans ce cadre, la place des femmes devient un enjeu hautement symbolique. Le contrôle du corps des femmes, de leur transmission de la nationalité, de leur statut personnel est souvent présenté comme une protection de l'identité collective. La réforme en matière de droits des femmes est alors perçue non comme une avancée sociale, mais comme une menace culturelle. À cela s'ajoutent des réalités politiques complexes, conflits armés, instabilité institutionnelle, instrumentalisation du religieux dans le débat public. Dans ces contextes fragiles, la question des droits des femmes est parfois reléguée au second plan, considérée comme non prioritaire face aux urgences sécuritaires ou économiques. Pourtant, c'est précisément dans ces contextes que la participation des femmes devient essentielle, non pas comme un supplément moral, mais comme une condition de résilience sociale. Car lorsque les femmes sont exclues, la société fonctionne sur une moitié de ses ressources. Lorsque leur voix est marginalisée dans l'interprétation religieuse, dans la décision politique, dans la définition des lois, c'est l'équilibre même du vivre ensemble qui est fragilisé. C'est dans ce contexte que le travail de la Fondation Adiane s'inscrit. Adiane en arabe veut dire religion au pluriel. C'est notre association. Dans l'espace public, nous avons fait un choix simple mais audacieux. Écoutez bien, c'est tout simple. Écrire en arabe au masculin et au féminin. Tous nos textes, toutes nos publications, tous nos articles sont inclusifs des femmes. Le langage arabe différencie, donc ça rallonge le texte, quoi. Cela n'a pas été accueilli sereinement. Certains invoquaient les lois de la grammaire arabe. D'autres affirmaient que cela rendait les textes plus longs. Mais derrière la grammaire se cachait une résistance plus profonde. Déplacer le centre symbolique. Nous avons persévéré. Et le temps a normalisé cette approche. Ce qui paraissait excessif est devenu naturel. La langue s'est élargie et avec elle, les champs du possible. De la même manière, nous avons inventé un néologisme. En arabe, leader religieux se dit homme religieux, rajul din. Nous avons intégré dans tous nos écrits, dans tous nos communiqués de presse, dans tous nos événements, l'expression femme religieuse. Parce que oui, il existe des femmes religieuses, des théologiennes, des prédicatrices. Les exclure par le langage, c'est les exclure du réel. Mais le travail ne s'arrête pas aux mots. Dans notre Parlement de jeunes, nous avons aussi changé la loi électorale dans ce Parlement de jeunes que nous avons créé. Les jeunes de mère libanaise sont considérés libanais et libanaises, alors que la loi libanaise, la loi qu'on a en ce moment, refuse toujours aux femmes libanaises de donner leur nationalité à leurs enfants et à leurs maris. Nous ne plaidons pas seulement pour la présence des femmes, nous questionnons les logiques juridiques qui les marginalisent. Et dans notre Parlement des jeunes, qui repense la loi électorale libanaise, les femmes occupent 40% des sièges. Écoutez bien, 40% sans quota imposé. Cela démontre une chose, que lorsque les règles du jeu sont repensées, la représentation change d'elle-même. Ce n'est pas la compétence des femmes qui manque, ce sont les structures qui doivent évoluer. C'est ma dernière page. Un autre enjeu fondamental est celui de l'interprétation des textes sacrés. Pendant des siècles, l'exégèse a été majoritairement masculine. Or, interpréter un texte sacré, ce n'est pas seulement lire des mots, c'est lire à partir d'une expérience vécue. Le travail de Dr Neila Tabara dans son ouvrage « L'islam pensé par une femme », paru en 2018, montre combien une lecture féminine et féministe enrichit la tradition au lieu de la menacer. Elle ouvre des espaces de justice là où d'habitude, l'habitude avait installé le silence. Aujourd'hui, cette réflexion se poursuit aussi en France. Dans notre projet Alwan, Alwan en arabe veut dire couleur au pluriel parce qu'on est de toutes les couleurs, de tous les backgrounds, de toutes les ethnicités. Donc dans notre projet Alwan, où nous formons des jeunes à penser ensemble, 3 dimensions de la diversité de genre, la justice sociale et les inégalités de classe, et la diversité culturelle et religieuse. Parce qu'on ne peut pas parler de dialogue interreligieux sans parler d'égalité. On ne peut pas parler de coexistence sans parler de justice. On ne peut pas parler de citoyenneté en laissant la moitié de la société à la périphérie. Le rôle des femmes dans le dialogue interreligieux et politique n'est pas décoratif. Il est structurant. Il transforme la langue, il transforme la loi, il transforme l'interprétation et il transforme notre conception même de la citoyenneté. Le dialogue interreligieux ne peut pas prétendre dépasser les divisions s'il reproduit les exclusions qu'il cherche à guérir. Intégrer pleinement les femmes, ce n'est pas ajouter une chaise autour de la table, c'est redessiner la table elle-même. Merci.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you very much. 3 very strong statements, a lot of thoughts. I think we all can relate to many of the ideas and experiences we listened to so far. Before I would like to open the floor, I would like to discuss one thing just with the panel members. We talked already about that today, that at the United Nations in 2000, we adopted the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. It's very important because it is a significant shift, emphasizing the need for women participation in peace and security matters. I remember when I was in the executive board of UN Women, which is the women's rights organization of the United Nations. I traveled to many countries, for example, also to Colombia. And they were talking about the importance that because of this revolution, this is what they said, because of this revolution, they managed to invite from both sides, from the rebels and from the government side, women to the table to take part in the peace talks. And I always say, I don't want to see the women taking notes. I would like to see the women to run the peace talks. Even, if I may say so, sometimes sign the peace treaties. This is still a way ahead, right? We would like to envisage. But also we say, and the numbers show, that in peace talks, peace resolutions, peace treaties, when women are involved, the peace is more durable, the peace lasts longer. Now, my question is to the panel, why is that? How would you explain this fact, Madam Minister?
Thank you very much. I think for me, it's looking at it from the practical point of view. It's easy that when women are involved, these things become durable because they take the burden. If the agreement doesn't work, the burden comes back to them. And I have so many practical examples, within my country to see that it's the women that try to keep the fabric of peace within the home, within the community, and so on and so forth. And once you have women, in fact, not just the peace process, in any top position or in leadership position, things work.
because the women would task themselves, you know. Monsieur Folio said the men only do one task, we multitask. But we have the heart that your grandson drew in the picture. So we're very much concerned about the implications of not having peace. So that's why we'll put in, you know, our all into it. We'll make sure the family from the family, and that's why I mentioned the issue of intergenerational learning. You know, the women and their children, you know, passing on, you know, issues of respect for the other, you know, what happens within the neighborhood community. So they are there operating at the, if I may say, the grassroots level. And they know the repercussions of not having peace. So to my mind, it's just very practical, very natural that when women are involved, these peace agreements, you know, are implemented and they last long. But as I said in my own intervention, it's just giving them access, calling them to the table. You know, if you have the meetings, for instance, how many average women will be able to come to a meeting like this? Even us that are coming here to talk, we're supported to come. But in the grassroots, in the countries, particularly where we have conflict, ongoing conflict, you know, different types of conflict. So the women cannot even afford to leave the family and go somewhere to talk. And when they go there to talk, are they listened to? Do they understand the language of the discussion? Is it the elites that come and have this high-level conference and have a document that most of the women cannot read? So for me, it's just natural that the women, when they have these agreements, you know.
Monsignor Follow? There is your microphone there. Yeah.
Elle est jalouse. Non,
Yeah, that works.
moi, je réponds toujours pour montrer que j'ai fait des études de philo. Dans la phénoménologie, il y a un concept que ça semble trop féminin, mais à mon avis, il est vrai. C'est la tendresse. Le mot tendresse, dans le sens de la phénoménologie, n'est pas seulement l'émotion où on câline l'homme ou la femme. C'est accueillir l'autre dans la totalité de ses facteurs. Alors, la femme, vous avez la tendresse, pas seulement parce que vous savez jouer avec vos enfants, vous avez une tendresse psychologique. Vous avez la capacité de comprendre la totalité de l'être humain qui est en jeu. Alors, la question n'est pas seulement se parler, c'est vraiment s'accueillir. Parler, ce n'est pas suffisant. Hein. À l'Assemblée, ils parlent toujours. À l'Assemblée, hein, ils parlent toujours. Yeah. Donc, c'est la tendresse dans le sens féminin, féminin du terme, parce que signifie, je répète, accueillir l'autre dans la totalité de sa facture. Pas seulement parce qu'il est beau, il est intelligent, etc.
Merci. So, Tanya, what would be your explanation? Why are peace treaties more durable when women are invited to the table?
I will be very brief because I would like to hear people in the room, but I will mention something that could be taken as a joke, but is real somehow. Lack of testosterone, that's for one, which is something. But most importantly, high emotional intelligence in women. Why? Because for thousands and hundreds of years, they left us be with our emotions, so we know how to manage those, to serve them. Third, motherhood and educational part of moms, we know how to choose the battles and what battles are worth fighting them and what's not. So that's in a brief.
Thank you very much. I also would like to add just one thing that according to my experiences, when women are part of the peace talks, they put topics there which are very important to girls, families, members, the women, which probably men probably forget about it. And also, that's true, you were all talking about a different style of the peace talks. When I always say, you know, when we know this beautiful flower is our target, we would like to go there. But then there are a lot of obstacles, right? Then we are happy to sort of move around, and then, you know, we just know what is our target. We would like to get there. Whereas, sadly, when men can't just go straight there, very often they start to shoot. Sadly. But this is somehow what we experience. But now I would like to open the floor. We have 10 minutes. Professor Jalali, you talked so beautifully about the heart of the women. Yeah, could we give a microphone to Professor?
Thank you very much, Madam President. You conducted the discussion wonderful. In fact, you are reminding of the time that you were presiding the General Conference and conducting the whole discussion in this crowd. And also, your panel is, for me, somehow nostalgic, because for years I have been missing the talk and deliberation of Mariam, minister, of my old colleague in UNESCO. Now I'm so happy to hear her again. Yeah, and also Monseigneur Fallo, that our office was in the same floor in Miolis, and I used to go each evening that he was free just to listen to him. He talked now about phenomenology, and I used to learn a lot from him in philosophy, in theology, in linguistics, in many things. And I'm honored to the first time I'm hearing from Madame Awad, and so I'm so happy that there's been lots of questions that we can discuss. I don't want to put the question just in a narrow way, because here is a panel with lots of experience and knowledge here. Perhaps you may open the window the way I wanted to put forward my question. You may open a window for the future discussions. First of all, Madam Awad, you and others, we talked about intercultural, interreligious dialogue. This has been a term I used to hear for 25 years in this house. I entered 1997, and it is now about 30. And the reality is that religions don't talk to each other, don't have dialogue to each other, because religions carry dogmas. Dogmas cannot talk to each other, cannot have dialogue. Monseigneur Fallo can better explain for you the dogma, because he is a man of the church. He knows much better than me the meaning of dogma. And therefore, dogmas cannot have dialogue. What is dialogue? Where dialogue is possible is dialogue among religious cultures. Means cultures who are originated. So when we talk about interreligious here, we don't mean religion with theological dogma. We mean a culture originated by religion. Therefore, that culture is a man-made product. It is not a divine product. When it is a man-made product, then dialogue is possible. And finally, they are not culture talk, they are finally people of that culture who have dialogue. So, having this preamble, what do you think is that dialogue? Because usually, when we talk about dialogue, usually they take it as somebody come, have a monologue, the other one have a monologue, then they call it a dialogue. This kind of monologue is explaining yourself for the other, while in the real dialogue, you are not explaining yourself in it. You are trying to be open to the explanation of the other one for you. You, in fact, open your heart to embrace other ideas. And this needs a modality. And women are strong related to in that because they used to have hug. We are brought up as a child by hug of our mothers.
We still hug.
We still hug. And then, so you know how to hug an idea of the other side. So the other side feel that he or she is listened to.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Do you have a specific question,
Yeah,
or
my
rather,
question is that how we can transform,
how can we?
transform that modality of dialogue,
Okay.
of just making a speech, to this kind of dialogue that I said. And one more thing, also the word peace was repeatedly referred to. Just one word. If you have time, give me some comment on that. If you don't have time,
We
leave
don't
it.
have time, really. It's
Okay.
3 minutes all for everything. So why don't I ask the panelists just to react to that?
Madam, I accept your
Yeah.
limitation because without that limitation, you couldn't control General Conference. Now you
That's
are
right. I'm sorry.
controlling me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I even stopped the presidents attending. May I ask you to react to that? It's a very important
very quickly, because
terminology.
as you said, this is a totally beautiful, long discussion. But dialogue is not definitely about dogma. Dialogue is about us versus them. This is the problem. It's cultural, it's individual, it's human. It's, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. Yes, it's human-made, and it comes from a very, very, very sad part of us, which is fear. If we manage to shrink our fear, the fear for our beliefs, the fear from others on our beliefs, the fear of being minorities, we win this war and we can have a dialogue. This is briefly, but we can, of course, have a long discussion about
Yeah.
what we did, what we do about that in our dialogue, but let's hear if anybody else has
Thank you very much,
questions.
Monsignor Follow. Would you like to react to that?
Just a suggestion. If I want to speak with my dear friend, I have to know myself. And so
Yeah.
we speak about religion, but if I ask Christian about their religion,
Yeah.
no, dogma, what is dogma? We are speaking about dogmas, but without saying which are dogmas. First, we need to know our identity, because
Yeah.
identity is not a sickness, and know our religion, at least like hypothesis. But if you don't know, it's not possible. The other thing is je parle en français, excusez-moi,
Ah.
puiser dans le puits de la tradition. Si je suis en Italie, et je dois apprendre à l'enfant, je parle de la tradition catholique, parce que si je suis en Iran, je parle de la tradition islamique, ou la grande de Perse. Sans la tradition, conçue pas comme un crop-flore, comme un arbre qui peut grandir, j'ai une hypothèse de travail. Sans la tradition, alors il faut connaître la tradition et nous-mêmes. Ça, c'est mon idée de dialogue. Sinon, on fait du blabla.
Merci beaucoup. And your reaction? Yeah.
Mine would be a brief response to Ambassador Jalali. And it made me reflect back into our own traditional African societies where there was really dialogue, you know, within the communities. But now I'm just wondering whether it's, you know, the extension into wider emerging trends, emerging issues that's making us look like what we're having, it's artificial, you know, not real dialogue, as he was trying to explain. But I still think there's room for researchers to try and redirect us to that kind of dialogue that he's mentioning. But I'm sure in my own traditional societies, yes, there's a form of dialogue that happens at the village level, at the town square, where people come and sit down and have proper dialogue. But now it's a bit, I wouldn't say artificial, a bit superfluous on another level. But we'll continue the discussion or the dialogue with Ambassador Jalali after this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just would like to react with one thought. What we learned from Master Ching Kung. We've seen it so many times. You remember when he showed his hand? You remember? Because we all love Master Ching Kung, right? And then he said, look, there are these fingers. These are all different religions. This is what he used to tell us. But if we go deep down, what Monsignor Solo was saying, if we know our own religion well, if we can analyze it, if we go deep down, somehow we meet here, all of us. Islam, Christian, Buddhist, Jew, you know, we go down, down, down. Somehow the common ground is there. And I think if there is something what we have learned so strongly from Master Ching Kung, I think that was a very important lesson. And the other one, and I would like to go back to my little grandson, the 4.5-year-old grandson, he was asked, I mean, the children were asked at school, what makes you calm? What is peace for you? And he said, my mom. You know, so this is how we are brought up. And that's why I showed you the red one, the heart is there in the middle. And this is how we raise our children, our sons, our daughters. We have to put our heart in it. And then hopefully, with this heart, with this love, what we give them, you know, they will have enough to give to someone else. So I would like to thank all the panelists, Monsignor Follo, Tanya Award, and Minister Katangum, to come here to share their ideas. And thank you very much for all of you being interested, being part of this very important discussion. I don't think so we can solve these problems, but probably we are getting closer and closer. We are over time, so I'm sorry I have to finish it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.